I really do think the best approach a leader can take is be the coach.
And it's really hard sometimes to keep that leadership and motivation going when you're the unsung hero. Welcome back to the Velocity podcast series, Elevate Your Leadership. My name's Annie, growth partner, and today I'm talking to Kelly Wakeman, the founder of Start Inspiring, about how you can elevate your leadership in an organisation. Okay, rule number one, leadership is a privilege. We work with some fantastic leaders in organisations, so regularly, and we should never, ever underestimate the impact we can have on their business and them as individuals. And for us, there's a real sensitivity about how we make sure we get that balance right. And because of that, at Start Inspiring, it was important for us to talk about how we elevate leadership in organisations, and whilst keeping true to ourselves in the way we sensitively want to navigate someone's life, because it's all about a work-life balance as well.
It's true, it's a privilege. It's also really hard to be a leader. And I think it's probably one of the hardest jobs, and is getting harder in what is a volatile environment for everybody worldwide, I would say. So we've been really looking at how organisations create velocity. So that's about everybody working at speed in the same direction. And what does a high velocity leader then look like? And we believe there are three elements, and there's huge amounts of data and evidence to back this up and support it. So for us, you need to have IQ. So I have the smarts to be able to lead the organisation. I have EQ, self-awareness, social awareness, and really brilliant leading and energizing my team. And then the third element is RQ, which we're calling resilience quotient, which is I have the resilience to be able to lead in this changing environment. I have the resilience to know when to go, when to wait, and I have the resilience to hold my nerve and keep people energized and clear about what needs to happen in order for high performance.
What we also recognise is that it is quality over quantity, right? It is such a critical factor of leadership capability and success. We were only talking the other week about, how we know that those human behaviours stick with people, the environment that they're coming into, the gestures that are actually genuine, the intentional acts of actually being congruent in the message and being present in listening to the response. And we've talked in our previous podcast about the value to slow down to actually go fast. This is a really important part of a business because, at the end of the day, we're impacting people, we're impacting leaders, and we also at times are carrying the emotions of our leaders because we want them to be lighter and have more clarity in their ability to lead their teams and, most importantly, themselves.
Mm-hmm. So we know in every high performing team there needs to be a foundation of trust. So when you talk about congruence, am I hearing and seeing from my leader congruent messages, congruent body language, congruent action? And if I do, I absolutely trust them, and that's how we can get to high performance. If we stop even there at the foundations of trust, then we're unlikely to really unlock the full potential of the individuals, the teams, or the organisations in which that's happening.
I love the McKinsey factory theory, where their model talks about how you actually build capacity in other people and through other people rather than just yourself. And it's really hard sometimes to keep that leadership and motivation going when you're the unsung hero behind the scenes, actually keeping all the cogs turning and giving your energy to other people. But I love the fact when McKinsey is talking about being that unsung hero, what he's actually doing is radiating energy in others, and what he's then getting back from that is enabling that person to continue to lead and empower people around him, whilst building a culture of people that are driving it themselves.
And it's interesting because I hear a lot of people talk about leadership is lonely. It doesn't have to be lonely. So when you look at that as a leadership principle, and we talk a lot, I hear a lot of organizations talk about empowerment, but they don't really know what they mean by that. Empowerment and leadership is about taking your whole organization, your whole team with you, using their knowledge, their experience, their energy, and making sure that you foster that as a culture. If you do that, you won't ever feel lonely. There'll be difficult decisions you need to make as a leader, but in the majority of cases, your team, the people around you, are the best people to talk about it with, obviously sensitively at times, but they're also the ones that help you enable that change. If we don't take our people on the journey with us, we won't go anywhere very fast.
Credibility is lost in leaders when they don't model the behaviours that they're expecting from people around them.
Absolutely. And you can be the most brilliant, well thought of leader and do one thing in front of everybody that was not your best moment, and you undo all of that reputation, because you can work really hard for a good reputation and truly unravel it in minutes. We have seen leaders lose their beep and that's all anyone talks about for the next month, and they probably hold that reputation for some time after.
As a growth partner, one of the toughest things to do is to sometimes let them make the mistake, let them make that assumption, because sometimes they're blindsided by assuming that what they know and what they see is the right thing to happen. And sometimes that sensitivity between giving some space through the advice that you share with them and giving them time to digest through their own actions, what I often then see comes back to full circle, because the decision they've made is about gaining respect and credibility, not about being liked by everybody.
Agreed. And I really do think the best approach a leader can take is be the coach. If you really think about that game of sport, you are on the sidelines. You are not one of the players in the team. You are not the one that's actually going to get the goal, but you are the one that makes sure that that team is working really well. You're seeing the moments where you can intervene and help them notice, but you are not taking away from them their abilities, their capabilities to actually get the goal.
It's interesting you use the rugby analogy, because how many times do you hear people or see people, whether it's on the TV or on the sidelines at a local match, and it's a fixture and they're shouting advice to people, they're shouting at the top of their advice to people, and the person next to them is shouting even louder at their child or their son, daughter, whoever it is. And what happens is that there is a lot of loud noise coming from the sidelines that doesn't help anybody. And at that point, every player on that pitch shuts down and plays their own game.
Absolutely. And I see it, my son's a trial biker, and we see it when I am observing there with the parents that scream at the children. It's just complete shutdown, and you can see that mindset of the individual just close down, versus coaching, which is that looks like a really tough run that you're about to do. Where do you think you're going to potentially fall over? Where do you think this or that could happen? And what do you think you could do? That is empowerment. That is giving accountability and ownership back to the individual. And that is trusting them that they have the gift within them to do the right thing. It is so easy to shout from the sideline, but what you don't end up with is high performance and growth.
What you end up is someone playing their own game.
Yeah.
And not listening to anybody else. And that's the difference between elevating leaders and dictating to managers.
Yeah. And in the workplace, I guess it's not always shouting, but it's telling and giving the answer. And again, if you can refrain from that as a leader and trust that the individuals that you've recruited, which you've spent a huge amount of money and time and effort finding, are capable of finding the answers, and you coach them from the sidelines and help them to be the best version of themselves, that is when they will own it. That is when next time they go and do the same piece of work, you don't even need to get involved.
One of the best games of rugby I've ever seen is where it was almost like throwing a stone in a pond and watching one player, I think it would be a number 9, the one in the middle, really the communication from that one player resonated out from the centre from the first pass, and this beautiful organic pass down the line meant that every player was involved in scoring that try, not
Absolutely.
just the one person that got it and decided to do it themselves.
And that's real leadership. You know, we talk often in organisations that work with the inverted triangle. I think so often, and still, you know, decades later after the research, we're seeing one leader decide where we go, cascade it down to everybody else, and expect that to deliver. The best organisations where we've done the most transformational work is when actually we invert that and we get the leader's role to be really about, yes, creating clear sense of direction and the why, and then allowing the human beings in the organisation with such intelligence to work out the how, and us to coach them from the sidelines, remove the barriers for them to be successful, and allow them to do what they do best on behalf of the organisation.
Also, giving them the tools and sometimes the space to understand that it is not always a this or that approach.
No, agreed.
It's this and that.
And you talk about space. That's what I love about coaching. Space to think, space to just have a bit of an aha moment, and space to work out what you're going to do next. It's so, we think it's quicker if we just give people the answers. And it might be first time round. But when you're still giving the answers fifth and sixth time round, it would have been worth coaching at the start and allowing people, and you see that beautiful moment where they look up and they're thinking, and then they come back with the answer, and you can see they feel proud that they've got the answer. And you also know in that very moment, because it's their idea, they're going to go away and they're going to do that, and they're going to do it really well.
One of the most challenging things sometimes is, before you're making any kind of investment for somebody in your organisation, is actually having the patience before you start for it to play itself through, to make it a meaningful period of time, to enable that person to elevate, to grow, to reflect, and then sometimes refine the way that they're doing.
Absolutely. And I think we're in such an impatient society. We want things with immediate results. And we know statistically, leadership or behaviour change takes at least 6 months to be fully embedded. We're working with a client at the moment, and if you think of that at an organisational level, we really are saying go slow to go fast. There is this desire to put in a leadership development program so that we're investing in our people, but to what end? And so go in, really understand what it is we want to be at the end of this intervention, this 6 month period. How do we want people? What will we see our leaders doing? What will we hear our leaders doing? And how do we articulate that so that if they can see it, they can be it? And then design a program that's going to give you that, a bespoke program that's going to give you what high performance looks like in your organization, still backed in all of the positive psychology, sports psychology, neurology that we work on as an organization, but not off the shelf. Your culture is your differentiator, and you build that through articulating the behaviors, the way you want people to work, the way you want them to make decisions, and build and ingrain that in your DNA.
One of the best pieces of feedback I think I've had in the last 6 weeks from a client was, before this process, we did our coaching diagnostic with them, and they said, I feel lighter because you've already predicted for me where we need to magnify our time, our energy, and our effort. So whilst they then understood why they needed a 3-6 month period for that learning to be embedded, they were able to predict some of the outcomes and eliminate and navigate away from those before we even started with that individual. That is powerful. And for the individual that's going on that journey themselves, how insightful to have a leader that stopped, listened, and was able to measure the success before they'd even started and share with them what good looks like.
Absolutely. And can you imagine, we do that at an individual level, when we magnify that and do it at a team level, everything goes faster, smoother, more enjoyable. We still do great work. And I think that is high performance in a nutshell, actually. I work really hard. We constantly want to be the best versions of ourselves. But boy, do we have fun while we do it.
If you've just listened to that, you'll understand how important leadership is to us at Start Inspiring. And actually that particular part of the podcast came from one of our listeners, and I loved actually being able to share some of our sports analogies with you about elevating leadership and what good leadership looks like. Thank you for listening.